Hi, I'm Dave Thompson and I'm in Hyperbright Studios and I'm going to do something I haven't done before, which is a mixing deep dive video. And I'm going to talk about some of the approaches that I've taken on mixing a track which I got the stems for recently. The artist that I've got the stems for was James and Paul, and it's a song called Feels Like off the album On My Way. Now, bizarrely, this has already been released as a mix that the studio that they worked with did, and I think it's a good kind of reference point, like listening to the to their mix versus my mix would be a good starting point.
Say that I need your hand, I'll say no, I'll come around. Eventually it will be too late.
Okay, so that's their version of the mix, and this is my version of the mix.
Tell me what I'll understand, and maybe I will make a sound. You'll say that I need your hand, I'll say no, I'll come around. Eventually it will be too late. You say I told you not to wait.
Okay, so just listening to my version in comparison to that, you see there's quite a few changes that I've made to this personally. I've taken a really different approach with it. I've pushed things a lot more. I've gone for a more kind of analogy kind of approach with the use of effects on vocals is a really noticeable change, and I'm just going to talk through why I made them choices and how I've kind of applied those choices in plugins form. Going from the drums, let's start with the drums. Now what we've got here, we've got the drums going through to a bus channel. So all of the drums have a bus on them, which is this Zen limiter. So that's without it. That's with it. I love the Zen limiter for UAD plugins. It's made by Softtube. It's a really great plugin. So that kind of acts as a bus. For the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to show all of these with the bus effects left on. So let's just go to the bass drum. This is with everything on. So you see on here I've got a Neve 1084 followed by a Distressor plugin, followed by a SBL Transient Designer, followed by Addictive Trigger. If I take all of them off, that's what you have. Adding in the 1084. It's a little bit more top-end definition. Most of this is brought in by the colour of the plugin itself, more than anything. It's just a slight amount of drive. The Distressor really adds a lot. Now, I felt the sustain was a little bit too long on this bass drum, so with a Transient Designer, I've just added a little bit of attack and then taken off quite a lot of the sustain. Still sounds natural, but a little bit more controlled. And then the Addictive Trigger blends a Tamron Star Classic kick and trig kick sample on top of it. Going into the snare, that's with nothing. Adding the 1084. Adding the Distressor. Adding the Transient Designer, which in this case is just adding a tiny bit of attack and taking most of the sustain off. I like quite snappy bass drum and snare. And then adding in the Addictive Trigger. And then adding in the overheads. If I take those effects off, you realise there's not a lot of cymbal definition on the overheads for some reason. It's more snare than anything. So the 1084 really brings out the hats, and that was the aim of that kind of thing, was to bring out more of the hats with a bit more high end. The tom tracks on here barely do anything, though there's a similar thing, a 1084 and then a Distressor. Just quickly. Without. Okay, and then on the room sound with nothing, with the 1084 and then the Distressor added in, and then you add it all together and you got a really full sounding drum sound. Then the drums are added in there. Now, I'm going to try and work from the bottom up in terms of frequency. So I tend to start with drums whenever I do a mix. Next, I tend to do the bass. For the bass, I've basically added in a CLA plugin. I'll just bypass it to show you the difference. Adding it in, so it really adds a lot of width to it. So if you've got nice, I always think if you've got a mix that starts from the drums and the bass sounding solid, then you're onto a winner, really. So next, the guitars. Now, the guitars being the way that they are, there's lots of them, and this was one of the things that I found with recording with these guys back in the day. I say I recorded these back in 2004 to 2007, so it's a long time ago. And I remember we used to always layer absolutely shed loads of guitars on top of each other. So what I've just basically done here is taken these guitar tracks that all will probably have multiples of guitars on them anyway, and they've been bussed to rhythm guitar, clean guitars, and Les Paul, and then I've just added a load of effects on top of that. So this is So I'm just going to go quickly and kind of solo out these guitars. Each of them have like one with an SM57 and one with a 121, whatever 121 is, I can't remember. So you've got some that are panned to the right, and then you've got a rhythm guitar that's panned to the left. And then that's all bussed to rhythm guitar bust. So it's quite a full sound to start off with. There's really quite a lot of work being done with the arrangement on this already. Adding in the Les Paul, interestingly, is a clean Les Paul. So this was one of the things that I did with Mercurius when I played with them, was we would add like lots of like guitar parts on top of each other that would kind of extend out the chords that were in the background. So you'd end up with quite a lot of layers of different guitars that all sounded really, really good together. It's like a wall of guitars we would create. So that's his Telecaster, which I presume was a Telecaster that had humbuckers on it, because I seem to remember Paul having a Telecaster that had a humbucker on the I don't know whether it was a double humbucker telly or whether it was one that just had a humbucker on the neck position. Yeah, I seem to remember a grey one back from them days. I don't know whether he's got the same guitar. That would be cool if he did. So that's the same thing where they've basically done the same part, but then done a left version and a right version to create a kind of chorusing effect. And Paul, being such a consistent guitar player, can do that. You know, he can do a part that sounds absolutely exactly the same, and then just play it again to layer it out and just to make it more full sounding, basically. So I felt like a lot of the work in terms of arrangement, decisions, and a lot of the levels and things like that are kind of already been decided by the time I'd got these stems. I think this is the difference between getting stems and getting a mix. Getting the stems and getting the tracks. The tracks, you get literally a session as it was recorded. When you get the stems, a lot of stuff is kind of committed and decisions are already kind of being made before you get a chance to make them yourself. So rather than complain about that, I thought I've still got scope to kind of add other things here. So what did I feel they needed? I felt they all needed a Neve 1084. And they all needed another trick that I did was to add essence, which is a De-Esser, which is putting a De-Esser on about the kind of higher mid-range is a really, really good way to meet out the guitars. This is around 2.4 kilohertz, and if I just switch these to like difference temporarily, you can hear the frequencies that have been taken out. Now, I felt with all of these, that was a frequency range that I didn't want in there. It's like a really harsh sounding frequency range that kind of doesn't add that much definition, but just it takes out a bit of meatiness, but just sounds generally a bit unpleasant. So just taking that out, you kind of get the added bonus of adding some meat by taking away a dynamically a frequency range that's a bit unpleasant. Then adding in Cla Guitars, which basically adds some compression and EQ to the scenario. And then my favorite new plugin from Waves, which is called CLA Epic, which adds hall and delay. So there you've got some amazing sounding guitars right away. Now, moving on to vocals. Let's get rid of all these solos. So, moving on to vocals, all I've really done, because, again, a lot of the work and a lot of the decisions were already made by the time this got to me. So, all of your vocals were already comped. Any kind of decisions with who was doing what, it was already, those decisions were already made. I mean, I haven't really had to do anything in terms of gating anything or anything like that, because it's all done once it got to me. I mean, it was literally a case of deciding, okay, I'll add in some kind of real-time auto-tune, just in case there were any harmonies that slipped out just slightly, because I felt there were some bits that I was like, well, it sounds right, but just with that stuck on there, it will just clean up if there's the odd harmony bit that isn't quite right. Then I've just added the Greg Wells voice-centric plugin, which adds delay, doubler, reverb, and some compression and processing that you basically, it's just compressed down to one knob, just called an intensity knob. Then after all of this, there is a bus, which is a Fairchild 670, which I've just gone background vocals, start in place, and then just tweaked some of the output levels a little bit.
Feeds on pain, I'm losing it, and I feel insane.
Let's go to somewhere, like, the beginning is quite interesting.
Da 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 da
Let me just compare what the difference a Fairchild makes. So without it, with it. Yeah, the Fairchild really adds quite a lot, and it adds a lot of glue. These, I mean, if you had the vocals without vocal centric, it. I mean, it sounds fine. It's just a little dry. I mean, just to show that I'm not helping them out too much by putting this auto-tune thing on here. The vocals do sound really in tune to start off with. I mean, we could probably do a mix without it. Going from the beginning. I mean, I'd be tempted, to be honest, to just take the auto. I wouldn't be surprised if there's been some kind of auto-tune kind of done already, to be honest, judging by just how ridiculously in tune the vocals are. I mean, yeah, again, this is work that has already been done before it's got to me.
I'll understand, then maybe I will make a sound. You'll say that I need your hand. I'll say no, I'll come around.
I mean, the vocals just sound great. I mean, so there's not really a huge amount of work that needs to be done on these, apart from adding a couple of plugins and a bus plugin. And there was like one section where I decided to do a bit of tweaking with the volume levels. Like towards the end, I felt that it was a bit too full on. If you do it with the context of the mix.
What it feels like, what it feels like.
I felt as the backing had gone so quiet, the vocals needed to be more subtle at the end, otherwise it would have just sounded out of place, being really full on at the end. Like I say, a lot of the kind of balancing out of the vocals that got to me had already been done as well, so like there wasn't really a huge amount of work to be done, and did odd tweaks, see bits like that. There's down 4.6, down 1.8 with down 1.8, so I have done a few tweaks on things at a clip level, as I've gone through, just doing that by ear. Then the only other thing, instrument-wise, is a tambourine part that's here. Is that going to a bus? Oh, it's going to the drums bus. So, I mean, yeah, it's a tambourine, yeah. I did a little bit with the 1084, just to kind of give it a bit of colour, and that was about it, really. So, in terms of the mix and the whole, everything is going through curve bender, and then a mastering setup on Shadow Hill's mastering compressor. If I just show you the difference before, this is after.
Through the wisdom in your voice, I'll kill my demons in one choice. Feels like my heart is breaking, and it seems like there's so much pain here, and it feels like my pulse is raising, all I keep is what.
So this is really, really a subtle addition. And to be honest, the thing that I think makes more of a difference is this Avid heat. If I bypass the Avid heat,
and it feels like my heart is breaking, and it seems like there's so much pain here, and it feels like my pulse is raising, all I keep is
Now, the whole point of Avid Heat is basically to add kind of analog summing within the box. And it's a similar thing to what UAD have done with Luna, the idea of giving analog summing within the box. But with Luna, there's a lot more options of different types of summing and things like that, whereas with Avid Heat, you've basically got drive and tone, and they're your only options. But in many ways, that's kind of the only options you really need. If you want something that has a bit more bite to it, you turn the tone up a bit higher. The drive in different directions kind of adds different kind of harmonics depending on which way you push it. And for the kind of thing you wanted something that's overall changing the timbre of the mix. So just having a couple of options there to do that. I'll just bring that here so you can actually see it. It's just this bit here. So you got drive and tone. So if I could go through this mix and just change some of those settings and see where I settled on.
I'll never awaken. It seems like my hope is fading, consumes me, feeds on pain. I'm losing it and I feel insane. You told me silence is my game.
So for that subtle bit of like saturation and depth, Avid Heat really does do the job. I mean, it's an amazing plugin for doing that kind of thing. So that is my first mixing deep dive. The track is called Feels Like by James and Paul. At the moment, my mix isn't released, though that might be changing soon. We'll see. But yeah, that's it for today. I'm Dave, and this is Hyperbright Studios. Bye bye.